the joint school board of supervisors meeting started. Just to introduce some of the board of supervisors when I started, we have Mr. Clay Forehand from the Madison District, Mr. Jeff Seeley from the Bowling Green District, Miss Nancy Long from the Port Royal District, Mr. Floyd Thomas from the Mattapan District, and I'm Mr. Jeff Black from the Western Caroline District. Mr. Underwood, who is our chair, is on vacation, so he will not be here tonight. So we'll turn over to the school board now.
Yeah, I'd like to call our meeting to order. Sean Kelly, acting chair until our chair arrives. Nancy Carson's here, Calvin Taylor's here, George Spalding is here. We're missing John Copeland. He is currently on vacation.
Okay, excellent. So do we want to go ahead and just kind of jump into agenda item number 1?
Sure. Thank you. So agenda item number 1, which we have provided a variety of accompanying information prior to the meeting, is associated with the FY 2018 to 2020 reversion funds. And we wanted to provide just a brief project update. And then we also wanted to expand upon information that we had shared with Mr. Colley and Mr. Parton in relation to emergency repairs that were occurring at the high school in relation to the cold chiller system. And so I am going to shift over to Ms. Stevens, and she will go ahead and provide an update associated with kind of, I'll call them artifacts number 1, since they're labeled in the corner of your packet. And she will not only just give you a brief overview of the front page chart, but she'll also talk to you a little bit about the chiller project. We do also have Mr. Caldwell here if there are any specific questions associated with the work and the scope of the project.
Good evening. The projects for the FY 18, 19, and 20 are listed. The ones in green are completely done. Of course, as you're doing estimates, some are over budget, some are under budget. So in looking at totality, $1.2 million was appropriated. We had spent $954,000. There is an estimated roof repair of $12,203 to be completed at Ladysmith. So we have remaining funds of $252,129.27. The emergency repairs that we have on the chilled water system with the proposal is $236,562.38. That leaves the remaining of $15,566.89. We did have another item last night, so we are not 100% completed with that chilled water system. We had an additional change order last night, probably approximately $4,500, so still under that $15,000. The next item in here is just a letter that we had sent to Mr. Kelly explaining the system that we've had approximately 45 plus weeks of the cracked valves in the chilled water system. So in the summer, we have taken advantage of the summertime. It's certainly not a good time to take your air conditioning system down, but we did have supplemental units in the office because we needed to ensure that we were up and ready for the schools. So we have the system online. It came online yesterday. We had an additional item we had to take care of. It was completed throughout the night. At 1 a.m. they completed it, and they will come back and do final installation this week and rebalancing.
Can I ask one question on that real quick? Was that system replaced during the renovations?
Yes, sir. It was a completely new system.
Yes, sir. And
so it wasn't under warranty?
No, sir. Those parts are not parts or feature warranty.
Was it the roof units were replaced?
The roof units.
No, the valves, the valves that are associated with the point where they crimp together with the different piping systems. And so there were hairline cracks where they were crimped.
I think it's inside the building, the chill water return loop inside the building.
in the loop.
Coming out of the main connection.
Circulates the.
Yeah, I know it does, but I've never seen one that's cramped.
They're ProPress, so they're crimped. So
So the
Are they
actual,
valves or connectors? I mean, do they turn on and off, or is it?
do you want to would you be able to explain the actual mechanism?
So the valves that were leaking are the actual taps that come off the main line going through the building. It did affect the supply and the return side. It was the actual valves themselves that were cracked. It is a ProPress valve that was used when they built the system. So there's a set of jaws that actually clamp the pipe together and squeeze. And at the point where they press together at the top is where we're finding that every one of them was cracked.
Sounds like a class action lawsuit.
Well, we actually did discuss that this morning in relation to potential liability. And so I did speak with the owner this morning of Harris Heating and Plumbing because I wanted to get some additional documentation associated with the project. And that project was undertaken prior to my arrival, Mrs. Stevens and Mr. Caldwell. So we pulled together all of the resources we had, but we still had some missing pieces to the puzzle. So I spoke with Clay Harris this morning, and he is providing us with some additional materials that will help us fill in those holes. But I asked, historically, they've been using this this Propel or ProPress, thank you, Propel is water, ProPress valve for approximately 10 years, the inception of the product. And I asked him if they had experienced any other projects that are experiencing the same outcome, and he said never. And so he provided me with the name of the manufacturer, and so we just received that right before this meeting. So Mr. Caldwell and Mrs. Stevens and I will be reaching out to that gentleman. He said that he would be more than happy to come on site and take a look at the photos that the current vendor has taken. The current vendor indicated that they had not seen that type of visible evidence of deterioration in their timeline of this work. So we do think that there is more information to gather. We also know that it's only on the cold side, it's on the chill side, not on the heat side. And so one person even indicated that it was a clamping situation that could be a human error versus a material error. And the heat side may have one person clamping who is doing it correctly, and the chill side could have one person going down the line clamping incorrectly.
How could they set those to a spec and it just automatically set it?
And
And
so
so they wasn't, so it's set right, it will only clamp a certain amount of pressure for the size of the fitting that it's doing, so that it takes that sort of human error out. So unless somebody set it wrong
set it
and
incorrectly.
had it too
At
tight.
different times, right? Set the unit wrong in different.
Or
Yes.
wore a tool or something like that.
And that's possible, but that's,
But you know, if you ask them, you sort of say, hey, this is a good look for you. Worst they can say it's no.
Well, that was the conversation
You
that
know,
began
they
today.
might-
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
But-
So there are a large number of valves in there. This was the emergency repair of trying to get this cold water side and the ones that we saw that were most impacted. So this was the emergency to be able to get up and running again, knowing that there are still many valves out there that this is not 100% replacement of those. So I haven't, sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing, just to update the record. We don't need our agenda item to say chiller request for chiller lines, because the chiller is a big machine on the top,
Sure.
and it kind of leads to our having this information.
It's the chilled water system.
Right, but it's the lines of the chiller. The chiller is the giant box on top of it.
Right,
The
it's the
main
actual
valves.
valves. The valves.
Yes.
Yes.
So attached is the actual proposal of the work that has been completed, and then the change order proposal also. So the original proposal in there was $196,725.80, and then the change order that came back in, because there was some big valves that they saw and discovered that needed additional work of $39,836.58. So the total of those two, again, last night, there was, we do not have that proposal yet. It was emergency to get back up and running again today. They estimated about $4,500 additional.
So the reason we are bringing this is we are aware that, of course, we have the $252,129.27 remaining from the projects that came in under, and then, of course, combining that with some of the remaining roofing funding, we are hoping that you would be comfortable with us utilizing those funds to pay for the emergency repair, knowing that we are going to continue to pursue to see if there is any liability associated with the project. I will share.
Basically, you appropriated these by the categories that were listed on the big spreadsheet we had back when we did this. So this money that's allocated for roofs, I really can't authorize us to pay that, to pay this vendor until you all authorize that money can switch from the roof line item to now a new line item for chill water repair.
I think we don't really have a choice because. Yeah, no, I understand what you're, I get what you're saying, but
You said most of the repairs have been made. Which you thought, right?
Yes, and in the midst of our conversation, we were able to change contracts because the state developed a new state contract for roofing, and it is a fabulous contract. So the projects that we've undertaken during the time of this funding have come in much lower than anticipated. An example Mr. Caldwell provided today to me was something that may have come in under bid at $20,000 under the state contract is at least 50% less. So we also found ourselves in a positive situation with that aspect as well.
I have no problem with that. Should have been roofs, roof doesn't have a problem at the moment. To something that you have to have for school starts. I don't know how everybody else feels, but
we need a motion for that.
Well, of the 350 for roof repairs that's in the spreadsheet,
Correct.
it's yellow, so it hasn't been done. How much have you spent of that?
I did not bring mine. I did them as a all-inclusive. We have the 252,000 left.
I have it set as a cap, 68,000 for each.
That's what's been spent. That's what they
Yes.
spent on those.
That's right there.
Mr. Klein, did you have a question? Any ceiling tiles that have been damaged, or those?
Mr.
Have we
Caldwell,
wrapped
can you
that into this
respond
as
to
well?
the ceiling tile question, please?
Yeah, we probably have, as far as ceiling tiles from the leaks, we probably have about a skid that was replaced today of ceiling tiles.
So that's already done.
Yeah, I had it in stock. I bought them, last year when we started finding the issues that, in June.
Just got another quick question for you, Mr. Fellow. Do you, how often at the schools, your 5 schools, do you walk the roofs to to just look at, some preventative maintenance? Because I know that's all these schools, most all of them have flat roofs.
I know that the high schools walk quite often lately.
Right, yeah, well-
We typically walk them after a big storm is when we try to do it. Make sure that no roof drains are plugged up. We're always looking in the buildings for visible leaks, signs of leak, through the ceiling tiles and stuff like that. But usually after a big storm is when we're trying to get a good visual on that.
And we've had a lot of storms lately.
Yeah, right.
As you guys are very well aware, and since those roof repairs have been done, we have not seen any additional areas that we have needs on the roofs.
Did we have a breakdown of where 350 is supposed to go?
It was broken down between the schools.
I don't know that we ever saw a line of detail in that. We put
There
the
was.
350 there because a lot of it, it was a placeholder for roof repairs. They knew they had a lot of different buildings that had roof repairs, but I'm not sure they knew exactly how much they were going to spend per building.
We actually had a consultant come in, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Caldwell, you might be able to provide some insight as they rotated through the buildings to kind of give us a greater perspective as to what types of repairs may be coming.
We had a consultant prior to even looking at, this as far as reversion funds, which was a company that was used by when Jeffrey was here. And that's where we based the pricing on. When RRMM did our indoor air quality study, they also did, a pretty much assessment on the roof while they were up there looking at it as well. And gave us good feedback on, what repairs needed to be made. After that, I know a company out of Chicago, I think it was Howland Roofing, had done an assessment. And then when we went to the Gordian contract to start getting some of these repairs done, they also brought their roofing contractor in and did assessments on it. And that's where we found the biggest saving is when Gordian came in and started getting the roofer up there and actually looking at the issues. You know, they were even pulling, you know, cat plates off on the metal roofs to say, okay, this is where the problem is. It's not this area that everybody was talking.
I mean, the point is, if there was a certain amount for roof repairs, are we eventually gonna have to do the roof repairs later? And what it seems like you're saying is there's no roof repairs beyond the 68,000.
Currently, we're good. You know, we keep monitoring the roof.
There'll be an ongoing construction component for repairs, but as of right now, we don't have anything that's pending that we're cognizant of that is requiring immediate attention.
I mean, I'm sure you know this, like these are flat roofs. I mean, every school, no matter every year, has leaks.
Part of it is when you do the roof repair, you put a pitch in the roof.
Well,
I mean, you
yeah,
can do that.
Build it up a little bit, build fall.
Yeah. I mean,
One other aspect that's changed since really, initiating these conversations as well is that we now have the infrastructure funding is mandated in our annual budget, and it's now required annually at 40%. So we do have those funds required and safeguarded for facility and maintenance. So should a $12,000 repair come up, we now have those set aside through the state in order to tackle those as well. So this pot could be diverted to this project, and it would not bleed us from the ability to address anything that arises, unless of course it's a complete roof replacement, and that would be a capital improvement project.
Just, Mr. Bell, I got one more question. Is there ever, as Mr. Thomas had said, is there ever like, and I've never understood this with schools, most of them are the flat roof. And do you ever do other pitches, any pitches in our roofs and care on any of the schools? And
The middle school is, the elementary, Bowling Green Elementary's got a metal pitched roof on it. The only real flat roofs are the high school. And I'm not even sure Lewis and Clark's got a flat roof.
Lewis and Clark has a flat roof over the cafeteria in the middle.
Madison.
The high school is, it's a flat roof on the high school, which still has,
Who put a metal roof on that when I was?
20+ years left of the warranty on that roof as well. It's a 30-year warranty on that roof.
Is that something that's like a good long-term project to do as far as to save money?
To what?
To pitch a roof.
Well, you look at
It's not, you're talking about redoing the whole roof.
When you're gonna redo the roof, then that's. when you would
They're
make that
pitched to
determination.
roof drains right now.
Right.
So they're coming from the sides to a drain, and the drains are inside the building, go outside the building. So you would
Basically, to build that up.
significant, I mean, it's not
Build
a
it
matter of adding a foot of pitch here to run it out. No, you gotta hit those drains.
It's
Because a lot of times the
also
walls come up, you got flashing over, and the roof is actually down below the level that you're seeing. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, wherever it is, however it's designed. And the membrane goes up the little wall and then down, and the roof drain's 20 feet away. So it's major, right? Okay.
It's what we call it a professional 40,000.
All right.
So, Bush, on this graph, you were saying that the remaining funds for chilled system at the repair, that's if you, and then you have remaining funds for completion projects above. So how much of the roof repair funds do you need to do to cover the repairs of the chiller?
It would be the 236, to round up for the emergency repairs last night, probably 240. And then as we go, if it's a little over, a little less, we ensure that just our net, I know one of the repairs, the handrails at the bleachers at CMS came over the $18,000. We just ensure that we don't go over our total amount of funding.
So it's not that you're gonna have 15,000 left over, you assume where you would take it from.
Yes, so right now, based on the dollars that we have now, we would have 15,000, but then this was done the day before last night. And so we received the call that we had another item to work in the middle of the night on, so, but we would definitely not go over our total 15,000. for any additional items that we need.
Need to vote?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, because you appropriated this into these categories, we're paying the invoices they're submitting, I would need that appropriated into a category that says chill water repair at the
So-
hospital.
Make a motion
Yeah.
to allow these chill water valve expenditures to be from this line item.
Second. I was looking for a figure. I didn't
Well,
know
it should be 240,000.
I have a motion and a second.
That's $80 left in
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Are
All
we
in
gonna-
favor?
I just said, are we gonna put a dollar amount? Are we gonna just move the 240? You're gonna move all?
Pay this current.
You need to put it in the motion of the 240.
I move to amend your motion to move 240,000.
241.
241,000.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion to allow the expense of $241,000 for the chill water repairs to be used out of the roof repair.
Then my second.
So I have a motion, I have an amended motion, an amended second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and we'll certainly keep you abreast of any developments that occur with that project.
We just need to find the architect.
All right, so we're doing
Metal slope roofs.
We'll move on to
Those look.
item number 2.
Item number 2 is one that should be relatively familiar with you if you have been monitoring the governor's budget, because I think it also is applicable to local governments, where Governor Youngkin has included a $1,000 bonus payment in the month of December of 2022. For schools, it is slated for standards of quality positions. And so I heard that exhale there, because we know that standards of quality is nowhere near sufficient in terms of calculations to cover the collective employee group. And CCPS, I think similarly to the quality, when we provide a bonus, we like to provide all employee categories that same bonus, because we feel there's value in every working group. And so we wanted to make sure that you had the historical background of the Senate and the House, and then the final adopted component is the italicized General Assembly paragraph. And so that clearly defines the parameters of the $1,000 bonus payment. So in the bottom portion of this one-page document, you will see the blue box, and the blue box indicates what ARPA bonus payments we are to receive, or payment we are to receive. In the Department of Education SOQ numbers, we are slated to receive funding for 381.98 positions. That is a total payment of $411,201.47. And so we are here today to talk about the ability to do a number of options. And we did list at the bottom a few different options. I will say number 2, I don't love, which is don't accept the funds. We certainly don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth and want to try to find a way to recognize all employees. But we are looking for additional funding of $342,348. That would allow us to give, and I'm going to just use a round number of 700 employees, because we're maybe 2 or 3 employees below that. But that would allow us to give those employees each the $1,000 bonus come December. So that is option 1, that we would receive that funding from the locality. That would be the clear appropriation from the Board of Supervisors. The second, of course, which I had already shared, is that we just simply don't accept the funding, which I don't view as a viable option. I would assume, and I don't want to put words into the school board's mouth, but I think that they too would hope that we would be able to utilize this. And then the third option, which I think, once we have a better understanding of what the audit shows come October, we'll know what that final year-end money looks like. But we're hoping that we could utilize potentially FY22 year-end money. That money is slated for one-time events, and this would be a one-time opportunity. And so we're hoping that with FY '22 year-end money, you would be comfortable revisiting this once we know more. We don't need to make a decision tonight, but we're hoping that you would be willing to consider reversion money being reappropriated for this one-time usage.
So, Mr. Thomas.
How does this $1,000 bonus affect people's VRS?
It does not. It does not. It is
So it
not.
doesn't go to their, retirement. at all?
No, sir.
Your salary didn't change. PRS were based on your
Right.
salary.
Not creditable compensation.
So the extra 30,000 that we're getting from the state, is that social security percentage?
Tell me what you mean when you say 30,000.
381, basically 382, to $1,000 each, is $382,000. But the number is 411, isn't it? Is that the social security match?
There's
The employers? Okay.
So it's a total $1,000 bonus and the school system picks up all the taxes on it? Is that what this says?
Well,
No.
they're actually picking up the taxes, the employer
The
match
employer.
on the side in which they're funding of the
Yeah, so
381.
Okay, so they're paying the employer for it.
They are, sir.
So easy math, you have 382 employees on this,
Mhm.
318 non-SOQ employees, because you said about that close to
That's
700.
700.
Plus the FICA.
Plus the FICA gets us to the 342. So that means they would cleanly get that $1,000. It wouldn't be, we're saying we're giving you $1,000 bonus, but then it's subtracting the FICA and the taxes, and they really only see.
That's what I,
Seven-
so that's what I asked though. So that's exactly what I asked.
Yeah, they still have
So
to
it's
pay their
only,
taxes.
so it's, so the employee's paying theirs, so you,
Yeah,
That was
but the
my
county's not,
question.
yeah, county's not.
so, okay, so you guys aren't paying the employee portion, you're just paying the
No.
So they
employee.
still get a check for it. Correct.
They're giving them
Thank you.
$1,000, but everything's gonna come.
It depends on what you plan.
Right.
You can't do a one-day contract?
Yes, sir.
No, the PRS is by the
No,
month,
that's creative, but no, we aren't able
by
to
the
do that.
month.
By the month?
Correct.
But I can write a by the month contract in addition to what they get under their standard contract.
It's in the code of Virginia. We focus next year.
It's because this is bonus by the state.
In the bill, it says SOQ funded instructional and support staff. Who is considered support staff?
Well, that definition is very broad, and support staff could mean paraprofessionals, it could mean custodians, it could mean maintenance, it could bus drivers. So that is a very broad term.
So
Does
how
it cover
do they
any
get those
administrators
numbers?
when they say support staff?
Not under support staff, but they could fall under the instructional staff because we pay them out of the instructional
So
category.
if it's is that a point of grayness right now? What support staff is? Because this definition of support staff can make a number, 250. This definition can make it 450.
Well, support staff, we could go back and we obviously will need to revisit this anyway because we would want to know where we were with the conclusion of the audit for the end of year funding. But we could go back and we could look at the SOQ funded positions by position.
Well, that's
and-
easy. It's the support staff. It may not have that hard and fast definition.
Well, we would be able to tell which positions are being covered under the 381.98. I don't have that tonight to share with you, but we could definitely dissect that a little bit more
It's just
closely.
more of a curiosity to see
Sure.
what falls underneath that.
They fund little pieces of the instructional supports, the technology staff, the maintenance staff,
Yeah, the state's already picked out what that is.
And I also read this to say that they're giving you the money based on whatever they have. You could determine what the bonus is gonna be per employee.
There is flexibility, you're right. There is absolutely flexibility in there. So we were talking this morning, and we had printed this prior to this morning's conversation. We were talking this morning about that line, and our interpretation is that if we have $411,000, in all likelihood, we based on the way we're interpreting this, we could divide that by 700. That could be a fourth option there, and just simple math, what is that, around $500 maybe? I don't have a calculator in front of me, but so that is an option. So when we come back, we certainly will add that as a fourth.
Is there, has the school board, like your school board association, that you guys have written to
to some of the state representatives saying that, because at VACO, I will tell you that counties are rejecting this. Like, counties are starting to say, we're not taking the money. And I know Fluvanna has rejected it. I know even Fairfax and Arlington, some of your Northern Virginias are rejecting this money because it is a strain on on impact on the match, and a strain on local governments, and especially up in Northern Virginia because they have so many non-SFQ positions. And has there been any discussion of like if they're going to start doing these bonuses that they need to come up with a better system than this because it's not. I mean, in the end, it's if Fluvanna decides to take it, and it just depends on the financial situation of each county. And one county might be in a better financial situation to handle it than another, and it puts a strain on local governments. So I don't know if there's. I know at VACO is really their stance is not being too happy with just doing the SOQ positions because it's
That
not,
may be why you're seeing that it can be less than that. You take the full amount divided by
Right.
whatever you want, and you take all the money, but you distribute it evenly across all the employees.
And I do know other localities, based on reading articles in the VSB and Morning News, in the Richmond area, I believe I've seen, for example, I want to say Chesterfield, but please don't quote me on that. They are using it for Title I buildings, and they're giving bonuses to Title I staff. That certainly is a viable way to utilize the funds, but it is not something that we have entertained, being that we are small. We have 5 schools, 2 of them are Title I. And so we haven't talked about that as an option, but I do think there's some inherent flexibility that may help with the sting that often comes with only partially funded mandates or partially funded opportunities.
but it puts a strain on. I'm just saying, like you guys, I would think that would be kind of a common area where we could both at a school board level because it puts you guys in a bind too.
Definitely.
I mean, it's not just putting us in a bind; it puts you guys in a bind
It
too. Like,
does.
as- basically throwing a piece of meat between two wolves.
Yeah,
And it's
it is.
actually creating
An
essentially
adversarial
creating an
scenario.
adversarial environment.
Yeah, definitely. I don't disagree. We're happy, we're moving into legislative season, so we're happy to have further conversation about that. That's something we want to advocate for.
And
They
this
do it
was
all the time. They do the same thing for comp board.
Mhm.
Now, if the sheriff's got a $1,500 comp board position and the deputy is working for us, we don't pick it up. They're doing the exact same job, not getting the funds.
How are you approaching the bonus in December? Have you had discussion at all about what you plan to do with the funding you're receiving? You're not receiving anything from
Yeah,
them
we're
right
not, I
now?
don't think we're getting any.
Circuit court clerk,
Oh,
that's August.
circuit court. Oh, gosh, so they really changed it for localities, because I remember in your budget. Okay. That got removed. Oh, wow, so that's a huge shift. Okay.
And then just on the school side, it shifted because this was actually in the caboose bill.
Right.
And then once the budget, it was supposed to be paid June 1. And when the budget never passed through, or took until the end of June to pass through, then it switched into the 23 bill. And it's not, it's federal dollars, it's not state dollars. And I don't know if that was made very clearly as the news was publicizing, because we've already been asked questions. Where's my $1,000 bonus from our staff? Because it was very public in the budget document that was, or the announcements coming in the news that there was the 5% compensation increase for teachers, as well as the $1,000 bonus coming. So those were certain news points that were definitely out there. And then when you have the funding, it's federal, and then it's only SOQ.
Can you tell us who the my question is, can you tell us who the 318 non-SOQ people are?
Well, the trouble with that is that the 381 are not whole people. They're not
Piece of
whole
position.
positions. They're parts and pieces. But what we'll do, and I think this is somewhat connected to what Mr. Forehand was inquiring about, is we can bring you the titles of the positions that are included in 381, and that will help you understand the type of role.
Well, that's for him. I'm interested in the remaining 318, the non-SOQ people.
Right.
I'd like to know who they are.
Well, just for an example, it could be instructional paras, so it could be that part of this 381, there's 22 instructional paras, or 22.4 instructional paras, and then the
We have
remaining
40.
17.6 are
Mhm.
local.
Oh, yeah.
So these positions
Okay.
are all the way across. They can, they're teachers,
That's what I'd like to
Yeah.
know, because I'm sure
Bus
this is
driver,
not the end of that.
bus drivers.
Bus
now.
drivers are all not, so
Yeah,
Yes.
your maintenance staff is probably not.
Maintenance staff is split,
Split.
technology staff is split, so there is part of the
is it possible
template,
you can get that?
it's on the template, so it's on VDOE, it's on the direct entitlement template. There is a tab in there that is your positions that are SOU.
So you can send that back to us when we
Certainly,
do
we
the
can.
But
second phase.
it's statewide, not school system specific.
Ours,
No, it's not, you pull it down.
ours, the 381.
For Caroline, we can pull it.
Like there's a
Okay.
portion of an assistant superintendent on there. There's a
So I mean, you're
portion of
gonna be able to
principals
give
on
us the non-SOU people. Right, that's what I'm,
You will see, when you look at the template, you will see the portions of positions that are supported, and then everything
that's gonna add up to 81.98.
correct,
Okay,
yes.
so after you do the template, you get the 381, then you'll be able to tell me what the other people are
I
that are not.
We won't be able to do that without a large amount of tedious work, and so I don't believe that that's a reasonable feat that we'll be able to tackle. I think you'll be able to generalize based on what you can see, because as Marcia stated, if we can tell you that we have 44 para educators, and you can see that within the 381, 20 are paid for, you'll be able to see that the other remaining positions for paras are paid by local dollars
But
or
you-
by grant funds.
You want
whatever.
us to justify spending $1,000 bonus for everybody, but not be able to tell what those 318 other people are?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm simply saying that it is a labor-intensive effort to provide you a breakdown of the other 320 positions, when 381 of them aren't 381 people.
Yeah,
They
I understand.
portions of positions.
Okay,
We'll do our best to provide you with what we can within reason.
okay.
And you can certainly make your decision associated with what you receive.
That's fair.
So I've got that request as well as adding the fourth option for the bonus, which is dividing it by 700.
Is there anything else left on agenda item number 2? Any other questions on agenda item number 2? All right, we want to go on to agenda item number 3 then.
Agenda item number 3 is a discussion of actual expenditures versus budgeted amounts and instruction line item. This is a recurring agenda item presented by Mr. Thomas, and he has requested that we revisit this.
Yes, I have requested that you review this.
So Mrs. Stevens is going to go ahead and give a brief summary, and then we'll entertain any remaining questions that you may have.
Let me give her some direction in terms of her summary. Previously, I passed out a spreadsheet for the school board and the board of supervisors. Hopefully you still have it. What my goal is, and I know the process itself has its own built-in issue, but somehow I want to be able to determine your actual spending versus what we're giving you for the next budget year. So if, for example, we gave you 31 million and you spent 30 million, then the next budget cycle, it looks like we're giving you half a million when we're really giving you 1.5 million over what you actually spent. So, and that's why I'm always asking about the single day contracts or things to get you as close to the actual expenditure or to the budget number, get your expenditure up to the budget number. So there's not this difference between actual and what we budgeted. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm not certain I'm 100% with you, but what I do know is that what Marcia is going to share is very clear, and it clearly articulates a response to this line item. So if after she is done, it does not provide you with what you are hoping to receive, then maybe you could provide a second attempt at what you just shared.
We'll listen intently.
Good evening. So this packet was sent to Mr. Kelly last week to provide to the staff in advance for the request of the board for review. So I have gone over just the brief synopsis at the beginning of our surplus, because if you don't have the revenues, you certainly can't expend it, no matter how much budget authority you have remaining. So in FY18, we had 35,000 remaining in operations, which was 0.08% of the budget. In FY19, 522, 1.22% of the budget. In FY20, 1.9, 1.2 million, just about at 4.45. We all understand that that was the year the pandemic hit us. The state was saying we weren't getting our revenues, though they come through and told us we are getting our revenues. So as we know, that was certainly not a year to, it's certainly not a year to hang our hat on. For fiscal year 21, we ended with 697, which was 1.46 of the budget. And so those were our remaining surpluses. Had we had, and I'm just throwing a number, $1.3 million of remaining budget authority in FY18, we would not have been able to spend more than $35,000. The next sheet I have is just it was submitted looking at this topic at the December 14th, 2021 meeting. And for that 18-year, there was remaining budget authority based on the revised budget of $30,317,000 of instruction. Actual instructional expenditures were $30,137,000. So there was a remaining budget authority of $180,000 in that instructional category, with our surplus being $35,000. So this was provided at the December meeting. It goes through each of the years to 20 for what we had at that particular time. In December, we also sent out to the community the next synopsis of the annual operating budget. It showed our increases of our budget each year, the county portion that we had received an increase on. It also showed us what our budget increase was used as compensation, benefits, and non-compensation, and then our compensation history that was provided to our staff over those years. And also, as a second item that was sent out in December, we also went over the instructional budget for FY22, those particular categories. As to the spending of compensation is at 63%. Employee benefits were at 30.9. So you're sitting at 93% of that budget is employees' compensation and benefits of that budget, sorry. A historical overview of the instructional budget for each of those years, and also a historical overview of the total operating budget for each of those years. I do have included Mr. Thomas's spreadsheet that was handed to us. I have some notes on there of where, in agreement with the numbers, in 2018 there was a difference on the expenditure. There was a audit adjustment that was prior year that was made during the audit, and then the need to look at revised budget to your actual expenditures to get the accurate unspent for the year. And then the last item I have is just a synopsis of how our budget module is developed. The schools start with a clean slate each year during the budget process. We do not take an Excel spreadsheet from the prior year and roll it over and do compensation benefits. We actually take all of our positions, we load them into a budget module in our financial systems. So our employees as they are at that time. So it's typically October when we're rolling those employees over, as well as the vacant positions. We budget our vacant positions on step 5, because we'll typically have employees come in with no years of experience, or they may come in with 10 or 20 years of experience. So we do budget those employees at a step 5. We also budget those employees on a employee plus 1 for health insurance coverage, because some employees come in with 0, some employees come in with family. So we do budget that in that employee plus 1. So we look at each of that. We do the scenarios and the calculations based on those employees. So We're not looking at employees that were with us 5 years ago. We're looking at the employees as they are right now in their experience and what their contract is. And then we do scenarios. If we're looking at a 5% increase, we build those pay scales in, we do that scenario. If we're looking at a VRS increase, we change those deductions on the system and we do those VRS adjustments based on it. So it's a true calculation of what the salary is and what the health insurance. If there's a health insurance increase, we put that in there. So that's how we do the budget. That's all in the budget prep module system. And we pull all the reports off of there. So we are developing that budget as a clean slate each year in order to capture, if we have employees that had a lot of experience and they've left us and now we've hired a new bunch of employees, it changes that base compensation. My base budget is then different moving on into the next year.
If I could interject, I think another aspect that is often impacting the instructional category and specific to the pandemic forward is the critical shortage of teachers. And so when we have this slated number of full-time equivalents or FTEs and we have vacancies that go unfilled, or we have people who determine after the first quarter that education is not their career path and they leave, and so then we don't have that position filled for a few months, we end up having a larger amount of instructional funding remaining because we are not paying out that salary and benefit as originally intended. So that is another factor that I've seen, and you certainly could interject, exacerbated through the pandemic, that I know all localities are experiencing, that the instructional pot tends to have more funding towards the end of the year than expected at the beginning of the year because of that transitional staff or vacancy component. So,
and when you hire the subs, they are certainly less than what you are for the full-time employee. You're not paying the benefits if you can get subs, and that's what we ran into last year. We were not able to get the subs, so therefore the sub budget had additional funds remaining in it, as well as you weren't filling the positions. So,
and we were also utilizing the pandemic funding to create a pot of money to pay teachers that are full salaried by us who are using their planning period to cover those vacant classrooms. And so we weren't even needing to use our instructional line. We were using grant funds from the pandemic.
So you were paying for those because you see stories, horror stories online where that I had my one planning period, now I gotta
Right.
and not being compensated.
We compensated, absolutely.
Good
And
for you. That's
provided a monthly report to the school board to show how that pot of money, I think we had about 300,000 or less in that amount of money from the grant. And we ended up in a positive amount at the end of the year with less than $27,000 left. So you could see that we were really utilizing our staff. They were willing and appreciative of the compensation. Tired, but willing. Good
related
question.
but not exact
Reevaluating.
I know you of course you increase compensation for experienced teachers. Do you offer some supplements to people that are degreed but may not have public school teaching experience? They have some other experiences. They're 40 years old.
Right.
Are they offered something more than just a fresh out?
Yes, absolutely. So I will invite Karen Foster, our Director of HR, to speak to that. We have multiple expanded licensure pathways, and so we have been able to compensate. I'll let her.
Certainly, so we do. We look at experience, and if somebody's been working in the private sector for 15 years, and they're probably not going to make the step zero. We look at that resume. We look at their pathway. We look at like skills that would transfer into a classroom, and then we do an analysis there. So we do have a variety of steps. They're not necessarily here, but we look at experience. And like Dr. Calder said, we then, as an HR department, help those new employees towards their licensure.
But the reason I ask is that fire department, police, a lot of times this is their clerk or something, or whatever, if they were IT and then they want to be a police officer or firefighter, they start at the bottom. I didn't know how much flexibility you had.
We try to find a natural pairing of skill set with whatever that person is going into the field for. So an easy example would be an emergency room nurse is leaving the hospital and she's coming in to serve as one of the certified nurse aid program instructors. So we would give year-to-year credit for that medical experience. We have, and even in the support staff realm, we have our bookkeepers. We had someone that had, accounting experience prior to, but had never worked in schools. And so that, of course, transferred over. Someone that's been in the world of journalism coming in to teach an English class. So we're doing that more and more and as consistently as possible in the realm of the shortage. It's the right thing to do.
Were you done, Mrs. Chief?
I just, Marcia, before we let you go, I have a quick question. I'm reading the definition of revised budget. And tell me how stable is like grants received? And what are the what kind of adjustments are you referring to in the adopted budget? Is that just help me understand what the revised budget includes?
Certainly, revised budget would include any supplemental appropriations that you all approve throughout the year. That we have, I know just recently, one that we brought before you all was additional sales tax and the need for the gas increase in transportation. So that would be a revised budget asking for that supplemental increase. A lot of our grants are not in the operational fund, it's in that special grant funds. So there are some grants, the IDEA, which is the special ed grant, that's approximately $1 million, is in the operation funds. And there are a few smaller grants that are also associated with special ed that are in the operational fund.
So really the grants don't affect the revised?
No, and this is the only operational budget. So these would be items like when I first came here, we had to ask for a categorical amendment in moving categories around which you approved. So our supplemental appropriations are based on the approval of the boards.
Thank you. I don't think so.
It's a good question.
I'm waiting for her to say.
So I think just the only other comment that I would make is in looking at, I know there's a comparison of looking at our instructional budget as the prior year and looking at the increase, knowing that when we are doing the calculation and completing our baseline budget, there's always a new baseline budget. So any lapse funding between those years is already cleared out in that baseline recalculation of the budget of our staffing when we come over into the new year. So if, as I mentioned, if we had more experienced people the year before and we have less experience now, then when I recalculate the budget, that's all in account in that original baseline budget. And we have seen some decreases in our original baseline budget prior to us doing the compensation supplements in scenarios.
Hard stop for you after time.
I waited patiently, and the one thing that well, let me back up. Sorry. My goal is to, like I've said before, make sure we get teacher raises, we fund our teachers, we pay them more than anywhere else, so we'll have the best and brightest teachers here. I don't know how realistic that goal is, but at least to get close to it is my goal. I also don't want us to be 14th on the list of surrounding counties. So I am looking at pure numbers. And the one thing that Mrs. Stevens said that is not shown in pure numbers is if there are more experienced teachers that leave and there are teachers that are hired with less experience, obviously you're not going to spend the same amount of money that you plan to spend. My goal and me as one vote would say you should spend every penny in the instruction line every year. And that's what my spreadsheets have pointed out based on budget. The adopted budget is what the Board of Supervisors approves. That's what says adopted instruction budget by category. Then the actual expenditure in that year is what you actually spend. Then I give you a budget increase of that expenditure, and then one of your actual. So when we talk about the board needs to give you more money in that particular category, we're giving more money, and whereas it looks like we gave you for 2019 $491,000 over the previous year, we actually gave you 1.3 over the previous year based on expenditure. And these are numbers, these are not, it says Thomas's spreadsheet, but it's not Thomas's spreadsheet, it's the county finance system spreadsheet. These numbers are just pulled from the county finance system. It's what we approved as the Board of Supervisors, what you actually spent based on the county finance system. And these numbers are fairly large in what we're giving you more. And I really want you to spend all the money we're giving you. And that's why I always harp on, can I give you a one-day contract? Can I give you anything? There's a lot of money in here that apparently didn't get spent. And there's a lot of money that we approve in the instruction category based on the previous year. So I'm just trying to get you that money so you'll spend it.
Can I ask a question? Well, let me start off. I guess I don't understand this mentality.
You don't understand them spending all the money in instruction?
Well, because every year, in previous years, I know when Dr. Killo was here, we would get a return from the schools of zero. And then, and hold on.
That was our fault. That was our fault.
The reversion month, we would get $0. We were upset, like, you're spending all the money. And now we're saying to the schools, now you're giving us back whatever. And there's going to be certain years, like I would imagine during the pandemic year, there was no buses going. So they're not spending any money on gas, and they can't budget to spend all of that money. They can't just switch it by category.
No, this is just instruction category. It's not anything else. This is just instruction.
But
it's just instruction.
What she said though, even just within the instruction category, is when you have teachers leave, there's no way to actually budget for. They can't actually. What she was saying is they don't know if they're going to hire someone that's like, has 30 years. Right. They have no way of knowing.
Okay, what I would do in that position, there are 10 teachers that had 40 years of experience. They quit, right, or retired, whatever. Yeah. We have 10 teachers that are brand new, first year out of college.
Sure.
There's a difference in those two salaries, right? Or those.
Absolutely.
Spend that money.
Make
it a bonus or whatever in that category.
But they can't. Yes.
Why not?
Can I make a couple of points? They start their budget in September of this year. And we'll know what they spent in instruction, not next year.
I know that.
24.
I know that.
And so that'll be through a bunch of sets of employees that have come and gone. And the other big point is, and she made it, I don't know if it's clear, they are looking year long to see if they've got the revenue from the state based on ADM. So they don't know until real late that they're going to have any money left over to do anything with. So other than just giving a bonus in June or July, they're not going to make that change during the year. And it was planned really 2 years early. So I'm not trying to defend them, but I don't
you understand what I'm trying to do?
I understand you want them to spend and not leave this money that they're leaving on the table. It's just hard in a way to do that other than just do it in some sort of bonus at the end of the year. But when they've done that, that hadn't gone over well with the board.
No, we never had that. We never had that at all.
Mr. Cully, do we spend every year when we put our budget up from the county, our total county budget, do we spend every year down to zero?
No.
We never.
And
we're happy.
And the previous superintendent talked about we should have put in jail.
And we prepare the same way. We take a spreadsheet of our existing employees when we go in with the vacancies, and that's what we put our raises on, and that's what we do. And depending, when we know in some departments we're gonna not spend because they haven't historically had vacancies, and everybody knows who those. And then we have some of ours, we know people probably going to still be there because they've been working for 20 years. But
How do you?
part of it's the revenue piece. They're not guaranteed that revenue that whether it's sales tax or other.
You know the ADM in March.
I know, but
Right.
ADM. But then there's other revenues they get. They're not necessarily going to be sure of. They could spend it late in the year. They could spend it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't care
But
when.
it's
I
not,
want
not
you to.
hiring other teachers or giving raises.
I want you to help however you can.
Let me flip the coin a little bit, to be fair to everybody. I understand that they can give bonuses because there's money left over at the end of the year. We really can't, as a board of supervisors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens is we end up with this sort of conflict between employees, not your fault, different budgets, but same view. You know, our department didn't spend $200,000, there's 30 of us. Why didn't we get $1,000 bonus? And that's sort of and that's the hard spot for me right now with I understand what the governor did with SOQ. You know, our only right now is the courts and the sheriff's office. You know, fire and rescue isn't covered at all by the state. It's all local. So we end up in a different rub than you all do, because we go, okay, you know, we're going to give you money to give bonuses. And then our employees look at us and go, you know, we're in the same boat.
Sure.
So that's so when they say take the extra money and give bonuses, it always makes me cringe a little bit, because we have employees too that we can't take the sheriff's budget if he sends back $250,000 and go, okay, we're going to give them all $1,000 bonus, because that's not how we budgeted in the
On our
past
side.
either. So
We're all charged with a certain game with rules, and we each have to play within those parameters. I think what you shared is very valid and applicable to schools when we're talking about insurance increases, or if we're talking about salary increases, or if we're talking about bonuses. And I think we deal with that on both sides, in terms of a rub that could occur when a locality gets something but the schools aren't able to achieve it, or vice versa. So I agree with you that can create an unfortunate situation.
I'm just saying that's what I hear the most from folks is
Sure.
they got this. Now, teachers get contracts every year. We don't give out contracts.
Right.
You know, we hire somebody, they're hired until they decide to quit. Right. But so what I'm trying to be is mindful of we all have different corners that we're in, but we have two groups of people that live in the community that look at all this very thing.
That also, and I agree with everything you said, Jeff. The other thing is though, is that's the state again. Why isn't the state saying, giving for our accounting? Why isn't there a pot of money to give bonuses to?
There is, but it's only the comp board.
It's comp board, and we're
But
talking
anyhow,
less than
okay, we're
30.
kind of
Well,
losing
it's
the
not
subject.
pedagogy versus practice.
How do we get back to whatever?
Right.
You guys gave bonuses
Yeah.
during the pandemic.
We did.
And I'm just saying that. And I personally didn't have a problem with that, other than the fact I would have liked to have known before you did it. But it was your money, you did it.
We
You
created.
still can do it again.
We created a rubric based on the criteria, and we evaluated every employee group based
I'm
on
good
the
with it.
rubric, and only select groups received it based on their level of at-risk
Exposure.
work. Correct.
I'm good with all of that. So that means there was a way to do it.
With that pot of money, yes, sir. That was one that did not go to.
I don't want to be 14.
I agree with you.
Bonuses won't
Just
change
say-
that, but the other thing, one more quick.
Sure.
At the end of the day, from any budget, what we need to be assured of from the county side, we've given you money, as you said, I need a 5% raise, I need a 7, I need a 3, or whatever. We've put that money there. You've done that, even if you had this left over due to vacancies and unable to fill jobs. You got your staff what you asked for and or what we funded. So what we agreed, all right, we're not giving you 7%, but you're getting 5.
Right.
You did the 5 for everybody across the board.
Yes.
Everything got done that they were asking for or were funded at. Correct?
And we too would like to spend every penny, but we also want to be fiscally sound and we don't want to be frivolous. And I don't believe that that would be well received by the community or the locality either if we spent down to zero and we're purchasing
Just in this line. item.
wildlife. Well, I do want to point out one of the other factors, similar to when you were saying a critical point that we all really need to have good understanding of, is that on this page, and they're not numbered unfortunately, but the one that is only on the instructional budget, the middle one box that talks about historical overview that looks solely at the instructional budget, those numbers on the far two right columns, those are remaining budget authority dollars for instruction based on the revised budget. And so
Say that again, slowly.
these numbers are the remaining budget authority that we have based on revised budget.
Revised budget.
Correct.
I don't have anything to do with revised budget.
And that is where we continue to have a circular conversation. We have to talk apples to apples with the revised budget. We can't go back to the adopted budget.
The adopted budget is what the county does based on your categories.
But what Dr. Calvary is saying is the revised budget is what you added or subtracted from that.
We never subtract.
Well, I'm just saying.
We never subtract.
We have
What-
moved categories.
Right, well, let me sharpen this point a little more. So I guess what Mr. Thomas is asking, so when you all got increased sales tax, it wasn't in the budget, wasn't in the adopted budget, because it comes in extra. So that goes into the revised budget?
Only if we get an appropriation approved by the board.
And
Which you all
we
just-
always appropriate. We've
To
never
Mr.
not
Thomas's
appropriated.
point, right, we've never.
See, my point is,
But then
when,
it changes the figure that we have to then move forward with working with. And so that's why
where
sometimes
did
when
you put the sales tax?
For FY 22, the one that you all approved, we put it in transportation. So you
So it had
would,
nothing to do with
cost of
instruction.
gas.
no, not for this one,
Okay,
not for this
you
particular,
never put it in instruction.
but there has been times that we have.
No, because you took money out of something
In FY,
last
well,
year from transportation to instruction.
that was not approved by you, and
Right.
therefore there is a negative.
That's what I'm saying. You
There
never
is
did anything for instruction.
Correct.
We
So
overspent.
just for FY 18, based on the revised budget, because that was the year when I first came to you
That's
all.
when you
And we
changed the
did
budget by
ask for an
800,000.
appropriation from you all did approve it. And the revised budget was 30,317,000. Therefore,
Right.
there was 180,000 remaining in instruction for that budget year.
But you took that 500,000 out. We didn't take it out. We've had this discussion already on that very point. We did not take that out.
The board
The board
approved
approved it.
You, based on what they asked.
That's what they asked us to do.
Right. We never took that. We didn't say, give me that 500,000 back. We gave it to you originally, and then you came back and changed your budget.
I guess what my goal is in this conversation, because, we could have this dance all night long if we elected to do so, but I just want to make sure
I
that
can only do
it'd be a good dance
I'm
for
old
30
and tired.
seconds.
I'll give you my best 30 seconds.
I think really what I just hope that comes out of this is that we have a good understanding of revisited or revised budget authority, that we are achieving what we've established with good clarity, that everyone understands when we say we're going to do something and you provide the funding, that we are fulfilling that obligation. And that at times, based on a variety of variables, whether it's vacancies or other factors, we may have money remaining in instruction, and it's not for lack of effort. It's the ADM coming in and we weren't able to spend, or it's the vacancies and the substitutes.
If
or
you could
the,
stop right there and say, when you have that,
Mhm.
if we could have a discussion among ourselves to say, hey, we have X amount of dollars that because of attrition or replacement, we may be able to give bonuses to our employees, we could discuss.
But they're not gonna know that.
They'll know that in March, they'll know the ADM.
Well, we're still waiting on sales tax to be produced because we're 2 months behind.
Well,
and-
I'm trying to help. So,
But no, I hear you. And if we knew that number, we could come to you in a joint meeting and be firm. We would be happy to have that dialogue. But also, just to be frank, just to be frank, that money is appropriated and we have the ability to spend it according to what we've defined, right?
That's what you
So
did
we're
before.
happy to have that conversation, but that is the current fiscal year funding,
That's your
so,
call.
right?
So if
I
you have,
think I'm here in a great place.
Yeah,
I think it's a healthy place. What I'm hearing you say is, as a board member, if you have money here, appropriate it to the best of your ability and make sure that you take care of the employees. And from our standpoint, when we are doing what we do, we have a good faith effort that we need to show to the Board of Supervisors so that it's very clear that I'm not giving you money to go to teachers and it's never making it to them. So I
thank you.
think it works.
I think that is my goal, is to have consensus around those factors.
That's
Here's, I have
What I'm
one
trying-
other question, because I feel like we're starting behind. When you do the adopted budget amounts, it looks like you're using, instead of the revised budget, you're using the adopted budget from the previous year. Even though in some cases it's well over, it's almost $1 million different.
Mrs. Hillary?
I'm looking at your 21-22 on the blue page, because it shows your adopted and revised, adopted and revised.
So the adopted, this is for each year, so fiscal year 18, the adopted was 40,970,994. Then we had some revisions that came in, supplemental appropriations that took us up to the 41,873,852.
Right, and when you
And then
add
when
the
we
next
build
year
the
into it.
FY19 budget, that budget goes away, so
Yeah, but
18
how do you-
totally goes away.
Yeah, but what
And
are we
we-
calculating the increase on? Which number?
We were doing it on the increase in the prior year.
So you're just using the adopted budget,
Are you
not the
talking-
revised budget.
You talking the total increase in
And
there?
the one I've done that I'm working with is 21 to 20, is the 22, from 21 to 22. I'm just, if we're gonna talk apples, right. And here's my
So
confusion, because you've got a revised budget of 45,861,000. And then you get a 2,653,280, or 2,653,280 budget increase, and it only goes to 47 instead of 48 something. And it's money you've received. That's my only point.
So it was, the total increase in the budget was the adopted the prior year.
But why wouldn't it be to the revised, since that's actually what you got?
Because those revised supplementals are not always, they could be a one-year grant that was in there, or it would be a one-year categorical amendment between the 2 years. So that was the increase that we had from adopted to adopted,
That's the way we look at it. We do our, we give you adopted to adopted.
of looking at the total increase that we're asking for. And then we said in there how it was, so our total increase for fiscal year 18 was $1,426,426 from the prior year. And the county portion increase of that was $297.
Okay, I'm just, because the funds are there, and that's when you finish the year and you've got this revised, it would seem to me you'd want to add your next year's revenue to that revised, because
Depends what the revision is for. That's like us, we give you, I show you what we've increased year over year, it's from the budget. Say you appropriate one time for one thing in Public Works to fix one thing, we don't look at that. So we just give you what Public Works was for FY20, and then here it is 21, and that's what the increase
Okay.
is. Even though there may have been 50 or 100 grand appropriated during the year for just one-time things. So it's just a cleaner way of looking at your increase year over year. You can look at the revised year over year, but you got to kind of dig into the details of why that happened. And with them, it's a lot of times it's grants.
because I'm just
They don't
looking,
always
on
carry
average,
over
it's $1
heavy
million
amounts.
a year revised over adopted. That's what I was looking at. It looks like you have more funds.
That works.
It looks like you have more money than showing, which then causes other issues at the end of the year.
Thinking back on a couple of those, I know we came forward and asked for anthem appropriations one year. We came forward and asked for school security grant appropriations one year, just thinking back of the different revisions that we had.
throughout the years.
Okay, and
Mr.
then,
Black, I have just a question for clarity. From the finance department standpoint, are you all on the same page with calling apples apples, revised, adopted? And are those numbers reconciled?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
let's move on to agenda item number 4, the administrative positions for CCPS.
Sure. So the final data request, I believe, stemmed from originally possibly the topic was brought up maybe by Mr. Thomas, and then Ms. Long asked for some similar information. So we were able to generate a variety of data. The turnaround time, of course, in the middle of the summer for the Human Resources Department, while our neighboring divisions are also in the midst of hiring, did not yield a huge amount of data, but the data we did receive actually was from like-sized divisions for the most part. So that really did align with what I think we were trying to accomplish. So you have a packet that has a paperclip on it, and the only document that you hadn't received in advance is the singleton. And I did this because I thought this is a multi-page document and I wanted to simplify it into clip notes. So I'm going to really focus on this one-page document that was on the top. I think that gives you the nuts and bolts of the multi-page data that maybe you've already looked at. So the first request was associated with the old conversation of top heaviness at central office. And you all may remember when we revisited this early in my career in Caroline, we had conducted a 2016 study and it identified that central office was understaffed. And so we didn't include that because we've already provided that in years past, but that kind of gives you just that baseline reminder. So what we did was we created a spreadsheet and we sent it to, gosh, I want to say 16 or 17 different regional divisions. And we received responses from King George, Louisa, Fredericksburg City, Dinwiddie, and King and Queen. And so you can see what their student enrollment is. King George at 4297, Louisa at 4984, Fred City at 3413, Dinwiddie at 3227, and King and Queen at 875, which is 5 times smaller. So we would have to multiply their data by 5 in order to provide a comparison. I do want to say Caroline is at 4303 in terms of bottoms and seats. And so in relation to the number of positions at each of the school board offices, we provided you with the Caroline breakdown so that you understood all of our department positions and how many employees were in each of those departments. We also provided you with job titles and then any associated notes that would provide you with some contextual understanding. So at the school board office for 4,300 students, Caroline has 38 employees. King George at 4297 has 31.5. You can take a look in the notes section. Their county does their financial work. So their financial employees are seated at the locality. So that would be a difference. And we have 5 employees in our finance department, and that includes the new director position. So that would be a difference between us and King George, who's really our closest comparison size-wise. Louisa has 40 employees at the school board office for 4,984 students. Fredericksburg City has 41.5, and they have 3413 for student enrollment. Dinwiddie has 40.16, and their student enrollment was 3227. And again, King and Queen had 9. I guess if you multiply that by 5, that would give them 45. I think that would probably be excessive, but we put it in there because they provided their information. So I felt that in conclusion, using the data that we had access to, that our central office is aligned with the respondents and specifically to like-sized divisions. Are there any questions on that specific portion of data? Yes, sir.
Did this spreadsheet ask for, are they hourly administrative positions or if they were salaried managerial positions?
I don't believe it asked for that, but I'll turn that over to Ms. Foster. I think they received the exact same chart that we gave you for Caroline, but I'll let Ms. Foster confirm.
I provided them, and the ones that responded went ahead and utilized that as their basis for report. Dinwiddie, King and Queen just gave me a one-liner to explain that
there's a V, they can do them.
Yeah.
Cause one, just anecdotally, there's a lot more directors now than what I recall 6 years ago.
Sure,
And with that title comes compensation.
absolutely.
So it's hard to look at it with the data given, and I do appreciate this, but it's our 38 positions, you know, are 10 of them director level positions making $100,000, and
Sure,
then they have 5 over there.
sure.
You know, you see that's a $500,000 difference where I can pay 5 admins $30,000. There's a gap. So that's looking at the data, strictly at the data, just anecdotally, that's whole, I guess, in the data that we can only.
Are you able to add anything?
If you, in terms of the back, break down by department, there is a chart that gives you a little bit more perspective with that, and it varies. We have a coordinator position. We're in another division. It's an assistant superintendent position. So, really, what we saw was we have for the divisions that have like numbers of central office than we do. They actually had more of the director level.
Can I see that page again?
Yeah, it looks like that.
It's
So
titled Central Office
data. And so, for instance, even for city has their superintendent, assistant superintendent, and a deputy superintendent. So there are 3 different offices of superintendents within their division. So it is very difficult because some divisions call things different as well.
Yep.
So we've got some supervisors that are directors elsewhere or coordinators elsewhere. So
Thank you.
that is a dangling escape. So I apologize.
No, I understand. It's hard to put a test photo on that.
I don't with us, but a total cost for our numbers.
For this 38, I don't need to know by position, just
Sure.
for these 38, how much does it cost?
I believe that we have that with us, but it's not something that we would struggle to create.
Okay.
Yeah, you can provide that.
No, yeah, I'd like that if you could.
Sure, sure.
Is it possible you could get the same thing for the other school divisions?
I can request it, however, I don't know that they'll provide that, especially at this time of year. It was a struggle to get the information right now, just in terms of positions, and I was very happy that we did get some responses.
Okay, good job. It's just a total. I mean, not each person, just like a total for their.
Right, sure.
These positions encompass so many different categories. So that's also, they're instructional category, they're administration category, technology category, maintenance.
Yeah, that's,
and
there's a lot of,
transportation.
as Clay said, there's a lot
Yeah.
of directors, so.
So they're across all of our categories that we have.
And this doesn't include all of the assistant principals.
That's the second set of data that's at the bottom. So if there are no more questions with data request 1, we can shift into data 2. Mrs. Foster?
I know too, just in terms of costs associated, we provided earlier this year a spreadsheet that had administrators and it had our directors, our superintendents, our coordinators, which ranked us with neighboring divisions as well, hopefully the ones that we've provided during the budget season. And with that, and I'll try to find it so we can get it to you fresh. But I knew that we were still right there at 13 or 14. It was 14.
And that
Yeah,
document
if you
actually
got
has
that.
our salary, so you have that information.
All right, I don't recall it, but if you can send it to me, yeah, you got it. You got that.
Thank you.
And then the other thing too for me, did you, with that, like, because the enrollment in Carolina has not really moved in 10 years. It's basically kind of stagnant. Can you tell us, can you just get for us the data, how many of these positions existed 10 years ago?
Well, since none of us were here 10 years ago, we will look at that request and look at how
was here.
far back we
David
can.
was here.
And job titles have shifted as well. So as restructuring has occurred, there have been, we'll do our best. We can look and
Parker
see.
came in, he redid everything. Yeah,
So what is the goal of the question? What are you trying to derive from the information?
I can tell you what I'm trying to derive is when I can have a parent call me and say, would you like to tell me why we have one middle school, you have principal, a vice principal, a supervisor of the principal and the assistant principal? But yet we also have a supervisor who is a supervisor, and we have a school board staff. Why are we paying somebody to supervise one school? We are not Northern Virginia. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know if it's mandatory. I don't know if it's, if this person has other responsibilities also, but I would think they certainly trust your principal and assistant principal and her staff to take care of one school. I can see it maybe in Northern Virginia if they had 10 elementary schools and you've got somebody going around, so keeping everybody on the same pace. But I can't explain to a parent why we're paying a person to supervise two people who are already paid to supervise the education of their children. That was my purpose in saying, why are these, trying to answer this question.
Well, the first thing I would love to invite you to do is to send that parent to the school so that we can provide that response, but also then request the information you're seeking from us. So both you get your answer, but the parent gets the answer from the experts in this content area. So if we can do that.
You can answer the parent, you can answer me. If they call me again,
Sure. Yes, no, please do. Please send them information. We want to help them understand, but we also want you to be able to understand. Exactly. So I'm just going to answer your one example. So when we'll use the middle school. When you look at the middle school, we have 3 assistant principals and we have a principal. All right. The school is 950 plus students, almost 1,000. And so each assistant principal oversees over 330 children. Okay. And then of course the principal oversees all of the operations. The director of secondary oversees the middle school and the high school, but we as a division do not have a professional learning department. So many divisions have a PD department, and that department creates K-12 professional learning. They are the liaisons between the VDOE and the school division and the buildings. We use our director of secondary to not only supervise and coach our APs and our principals in both of those buildings, but they also remain cognizant of all curricular changes, all assessment changes, and they're the person that brings that from the Department of Education to central office. We modify all the curriculum materials, we plan all of the professional learning, we make sure all of our materials and resources are aligned, and then they get pushed out to the principals to operationalize it boots on the ground. So they are almost like the man behind the curtain, doing that behind the scenes work, and then they go out into the trenches and watch the implementation, evaluate implementation, celebrate successes, come back, and that recurring cyclical improvement that they're guiding with the principal hip to hip. Does that help?
Yeah. So we have a lot of people over at the high school who did similar type of thing.
I could add, Ms. Long, feel free to give any of those persons put wrong this or whatever. Yeah. But since I do represent,
well, I know you got cornered by one.
But I have no problem speaking with them, and I just want to.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think from my perspective, because I'm in the schools, is the one thing that we do get phone calls, and I'm sure every other supervisor does, is we do get calls from teachers asking why even your teachers are, why is this position, why the school's this position, and we're not getting a raise, and that's, I need to send them to them, to you guys, but at the same time, it's a perception even with some of your own employees. So it's not like it's like if I have a teacher calling me, and I have teachers from Bowling Green Elementary and the middle school and Lewis and Clark who do regularly call me about stuff, and so that's, to me, I would rather see the money go towards teacher raises, towards your bus towards your bus personnel and so forth. And I'm not saying all these positions aren't needed, but at the same time, in 2007, 2008, when the last recession hit, those were the positions that went in school systems first. I mean, they cut those back, in order to save teachers. It's like you're having a teacher shortage right now. And I'd rather just see the money go towards the people who are actually in the classroom. So that's where my perspective is.
And my colleagues can attest to this, and I say it frequently. We have so much technology that's supposed to make our lives easier, yet we keep hiring people on the county side, on the school side. In life, we have to hire so many people to keep up with the technology that's supposed to make our life easier and make us more efficient. I'm like,
We're not.
something's not happening.
We didn't have a director of technology. I mean, I remember my senior year of high school when we got a computer in the school, and it was such a big deal. And now it's not a computer in the school; it's every kid that has a computer. And where are they going? And how do we monitor that?
We put a person.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the expectations of teaching have increased dramatically.
It's all right, one day the whole system's gonna go down, none of the kids gonna know how to go into a library and try to book it. To the drawer.
How to change it? That's my fear.
Everything on the internet's real.
Did you want me to go over item 2? Okay, is everyone good with shifting to item 2 at the bottom of this same sheet? This was the secondary request after conferring with Mrs. Long on the phone. I gained greater clarity, and she also was looking for building administration data associated with enrollment by building, and then a regional comparison. So the summary I was able to glean from the data that we received, and I will share that our source of information was the Department of Education website. So this is information that came right from the VDOE rather than from divisions themselves. So we got multiple responses, but I pulled the like size divisions. We're on the same sheet, exact number 2 at the bottom. God bless you. All right, so we all know student enrollment is listed there. So Caroline County, for 4,303 students, we have 17 building administrators. Okay.
All right, so thank you, Charlie.
Now, I want to put a caveat out there, because one thing that this data doesn't show, other than for Caroline, is you have to keep in mind that every division has unique programmatic needs or unique demographic needs. And so one school building may have a high level of low socioeconomic students, and they may need additional resources. I haven't noted that for any buildings, but I have noted for Caroline that we would be seated at 15 if we did not have our own unique internal CTE program, which is comprehensive and robust for a rural division. So we have an AP that oversees over 13 to 14 different CTE offering pathways. We also have no need to use an external regional alternative education program, because we have our own internal program. And when you run the cost differential, it's much more affordable for us to run our internal program. It's beneficial for our kids to stay in their home county than to send them to a regional program and have to pay for that on an annual basis. So we have those 2 additional that get us to 17. Dinwiddie at 3,227 students has 14 administrators. Fred City at 3,413, they have 13 administrators. Louisa at 4,984 has 18 administrators. Orange at 4,907 has 15. Gloucester at 4,607 has 20. And Culpeper is the larger of the comparisons, and at 7,388 they have 27. So based on the like size comparisons, my conclusion is that we align with like size divisions. And that is, of course, with me not knowing some of their unique qualities. Some of them may have all ed internal. Some of them, like Louisa, they have a tremendous CTE program, and I know they have a principal for that as well. So I just don't know those nuances. But I think holistically, when you look at the range, you've got 13 to I'll say 20. We'll pull out Culpeper. It's a little bit of an outlier, at the 7,388. We fall right within the wheelhouse of what I would consider to be average and range.
How is your, for these 17 positions right here, because the building administrators are extremely important.
Correct.
How is your compensation for them compared to, I'm not talking central office, I'm talking building administrators compared to other divisions?
It's a good question. We are in the midst of a salary study, and so we're very anxious to get that information back. So for example, I know that in Spotsylvania, which you're very familiar with, that a seated high school principal is being offered anywhere between 130 and 140. That would not be the case for Caroline. We are nowhere near that.
Right.
And that's the direct region to our north. And that something comparable would be similar to our south in Hanover.
But you pulled a principal for us recently from Hanover. Justin.
Yeah, last year.
Oh, he came over as a principal, but he was in an assistant principal role.
Okay,
So it was a promotion. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And in that case, we certainly are able to provide something that is a positive step
Tangible,
forward.
yeah, step.
But they could easily do a lateral at contract time and move to a neighboring division and make a decent chunk more, especially at this day and age.
How many did you have change over this year of these 17?
We did not replace any, oh, that's not true. We hired Mr. Dudley at the high school as an assistant principal. He replaced Travis Phillips, who left for the correctional department as an assistant principal. And we replaced 2 at the middle school, which was Mr. Hancock and Ms. Tucholsky left the school division. And so we took our admin intern, Dr. Jamie Harnden, and she was already in the building and she shifted into AP. And we hired Mr.
Brian.
Brian Conlon. Yes, thank you, from Chesterfield. So 3 APs. And I know Brian, he was in my U of R class, and I still forgot his name. Yeah.
We need to ask Mr. Phillips in a year or so, hey, your populations.
Well, he had worked in the correctional system prior to as a teacher. And I think the evening hours look very different at the correctional facility than at a high school in K-12 education. He's got a young family that he wants to be present for.
I have a quick question on this chart of all the different positions under technology. It's 6. Let's see, you've got grant funded. Are those still on for this year, or is that going to be toned down now that we're going back to school?
We have our coordinator of virtual learning and innovation is grant funded. That position is funded through the end of 2023 or 24? 2023. So we will be reevaluating that position to determine need. Currently, that position oversees all of our instructional technology resource teachers in the building. They oversee STEM, and she's overseeing virtual instruction. Now, some of that's waning because the interest in virtual instruction, especially at elementary, is far smaller. Secondary, we still have a decent number, but I don't know that that position will be in existence beyond the grant funding, but we are still evaluating.
So that's one of the 6.
Correct.
Thank you. I was just wondering.
Any other questions?
Yes, so again, on that topic, or any topic. Mr. Underwood had 2 questions he called me when I needed it.
Okay.
Finish with that topic.
Okay. Are we
I
done
don't
with
want you to turn a
the
meeting.
Yeah.
Pick up.
All right. Yeah. Let's go on to if we can. Let's go on to Mr. Underwood's questions now.
And this question you brought up with me when I sent you the audio. I told him that today, and I sent you the audio. He still wants information on testing and results versus the pandemic and after the pandemic. Remember I sent you the audio of his statement at the end of the
Right.
meeting?
I responded back to you in email and gave you the video clip of our last school board meeting and told you exactly where
Did we send that
the
out?
presentation was in our school board meeting.
So the whole board got it.
So he needs to pull up the video and just watch that section, and then if he has remaining questions, we're happy to answer those in detail.
Very good. He's watching this tomorrow. The other thing he asked me, and I'll try to explain this to you. could you have used the bonus money that was given this year, I guess, for contract signing, and done a different amount, to had more money to put in the account? So like 500 instead of 1,000, and then had leftover money to do things that you had talked about needing to do. You didn't give me any specific examples.
I just wanna make sure,
I,
thinking of
So you're signing bonus.
which
the
was
contract signing
our
bonus.
Caroline commitment. So anyone that signed their contract or a letter, an intent letter, thank you, employment letter, appointment, goodness, they received the sign bonus, the Caroline commitment. So he is asking, could we have,
then thought about doing that at a lower amount, so you would have some of the remaining money that you used into your money that you did for that to do for other things that you've asked us about, like that. Other things you brought up
Sure.
about.
I'm with you. So that would have elevated our year-end amount. And we would then in turn come back to you, instead of saying we have 500,000 remaining, we have 900,000 remaining. And now we want to do A, B, and C. Okay, sure, we could have done that. We elected not to do that because at the time that we made a decision about Caroline commitment, we are competing regionally with school divisions who are, you know, equally as aggressive, if not more, in their signing bonuses and in their needs. And you're reading articles every day that Richmond City still has 170
They lost
vacancies.
25% of their staff at the end of the year.
Yes. And we, you know, we have kudos to Karen's team and our team. You know, they have done extremely well, and we have very few vacancies remaining. We do have 5 grant positions that are class size reduction positions that if we don't fill, that money is going to be sitting in the grant. We're going to have to figure out another way to spend that money down, because it's 2 years now we haven't been able to fill that. We can't find the people. So we're filling our local positions first.
Certified teacher, is the only one that qualifies.
They could be provisional, but last year what we did was we took some of those monies and we ended up breaking them into like hourly tutoring and shifted the money around
What
to
are those
get
positions for? What,
teacher positions.
I mean, what grade? I mean, what subjects?
We have them appropriated to the middle school and elementary
The
school.
elementary school, correct, yes, so we've got, 2 of our elementary schools have 1 position allocated, and the middle school has 3, based upon numbers, so we were looking at class size reduction, knowing the impact that the pandemic has had, and making sure that, especially in our math and English classes, we have the smaller classes.
Well, you know numbers, so we might be able to give you an A day.
We are looking for math teachers as well. So,
Not rich.
Record.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any? I have a, it's not on the schedule, but it's just, it's a curiosity. It's not controversial, but.
Yeah.
Wants to talk about.
Well, time out. If it is, we're done.
Yeah, I'm looking, I'm counting the number of schools at the various other districts, and I know that the district I went to many years ago, they had small, more local elementary schools. And I look at Orange, and I look at Gloucester, and I look at, what's the other? Dinwiddie, for example. I mean, these are geographically smaller counties, especially the one I went to. It's 200 square miles less than what we are here, but they had 10 schools. And then some of them were, there's 1 kindergarten class, 1 first grade class. But I can hear 45 years later or 40 years later, those people that went to those little schools, they all enjoyed that experience. And I wonder if how much research, again, it's not something I've dug into, how much research has been done on the smaller, more local schools and how successful or unsuccessful they are. Because I know, for example, the people in Dawn, to go to Bowling Green Elementary, that's not an easy trip. To go run a backpack, to go spend lunch with my child, that is a 45-minute round trip at best.
Oh, go to Skinner's Neck.
Well, I'm just saying at best.
Yeah,
And I wonder how that would impact the schools, and it's a model. And I understand, and you have another building, another roof, you have another building to maintain, you have to have a principal, you have to have food service, you have to have all these things.
It's a costly to run.
Yes, but I wonder if there's ever how much study. I would think that all the grad students out there is going to study it at some point.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons when you look at, I'm from New York, and New York operates based on districts. So they have a much smaller population with smaller schools that are more community schools. And then you come to the Commonwealth and we operate based on counties. And so then you've got that huge variation. And then I also think I love a great community school, but then you also run the risk of not having, rich diversity too of your student base. So I think there are pros and cons to, both sides. I think you could find research to support either argument too. But I do think that an elementary school of over 900 is large.
Yes.
That is not ideal for an elementary school.
But what makes it bad? If large is bad, but what makes it bad?
Well, this is Sarah's personal opinion, not a scientific response. I think that at elementary school, you're building the foundational, building blocks of your passion for education. And when you have a large building, the teachers don't know one another as well. The networking gets impacted. I think the student base doesn't have the familiarity with each other, and so that bonding that often happens is diminished.
That bond.
Yes, but I do believe that we are so blessed. We have very strong administrators at Lewis and Clark, and so they run a tight ship. They also have a tremendous culture, and so together they have that magical blend that helps compensate for 900 plus. But if you don't have a Jeff White, a Becky Elam, a Cindy Brown steering your ship, 900 could become easily more problematic than a 500.
Yeah. So I'm not sure class size is around two. Yeah.
It can be. It can be.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I do just want to point out two separate things. One, we gave you our new, hot off the press, Achieve 2027 strategic plan. We would love at a time that is convenient for you, if you'd like to get just a little rundown at a meeting, 10-minute overview. We're happy to do that. And then I think a couple of you are planning to join us on Monday, the 8th, for convocation. It starts at 3 o'clock. If you can make it, we'd love to have you. I think we have Mrs. Long that's RSVP'd. Mr. Black, I think, is attending. I don't know, Mr. Cully, you often come, but I don't know if you are planning to join us. But those are just two reminders. And then the only other thing, I just been planting a seed, and I have it for tonight, but I don't want to keep us. I went to the VSBA summer conference with the board, and I was able to attend a table talk. And it was Dinwiddie, and it was a school representative and it was a county representative, and they were presenting together. And the county representative, his title was Youth Workforce Development Manager. He was part of the Workforce Development Economic Development team in Dinwiddie. The presentation was amazing. They have this gorgeous program where kids from the government program at the high school apply, and it's a prestigious opportunity. They come over to the Board of Supervisors. They are with them for a day. The Board of Supervisors talk about local government. They then run them through all these budget scenarios so that the kids can experience the types of dilemmas that you have. You did?
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Mrs. Blank.
Well, I have all of the paperwork. They also use this position to work with the schools and run internships over the summer.
Send them to us.
So I would love to talk more about it, and maybe even they said we could come visit them on their government day. I just think it is the next level of awesomeness.
Give me a call when you give me the number of the non-SOP.
I will.
Deal.
Anytime for us, and I know a lot of us, anytime for us that your government classes, that I know in senior government, a lot of times local government is left out, and they teach national and state, and then they don't have time for local. But I would imagine a lot of your supervisors would be willing to go in and talk to the kids about the decisions, that we need to make.
Middle school last year,
Right.
3 different classes.
We actually had part of our meeting.
Yep, and just kind of come in, so we would gladly welcome them for that. So are we almost ready to go? All right.
No, I got one comment. It's not on the schedule or whatever. I was down at school a couple days ago, watching two teams practice on the practice field, about 100 kids. That was two teams, that was all. That was not JV, middle school, wasn't the community teams or anything else like that. The football field right now looks great. Once all those teams start playing on it, by the middle of the season, it's gonna look like a dust bowl down there. When spring rolls around, soccer starts playing down there. There's not gonna be any grass or whatever. I go over this with you guys every year. You realize that I counted up roughly 30% of our student body plays some type of athletics outdoors on that playing field down there. 30%. Now you say, well, what's the big deal? First of all, if they're playing a sport, they have a tendency to stay out of trouble. These coaches are on these kids all the time with the teachers, the classroom, and this sort of thing, and all discipline and everything else. They teach them sportsmanship. You know what the drill is, and so on and all. And right now, we're one of the few schools in this whole Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania area that doesn't have artificial turf. You know that all Spotsylvania is going to have it, right? Aren't they working on Spotsylvania?
They do. All
Yeah, all of them have it. And then here they come down here and they play on our dirt field, and by that time it's going to be a cow pasture. And it's like, we've talked about this before. You save on maintenance. What are you laughing at?
No, I'm just saying my boys love to get dirty. They always like to play in the mud, and they were playing football in the yard.
Well, I did too 50 years ago. Anyway, what I'm saying is, it puts our kids at disadvantage. It gives them pride. You know, people laughed at us and got mad at us when we went with a colored track. That was the pride. Everybody in the area wanted to run on our colored track because we were the only ones that had it. And it's something I wish you would really, really think about it. You say, well, it's just athletics. No. It's more than athletics. Now start saving our pennies here, and I was going to say $1 million, but the rate things are going now. Petroleum price is going up. It'll probably be double that.
What does Hanover have, Coach?
Pardon?
What does Hanover have? Going down 301, that's Hanover High, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that's grass?
I think it's astrograss.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was regular grass. Their field is locked, so I couldn't get on it.
It looks like, it's got a little head on it, so forth and all. But all these schools are going to, because it's maintenance, almost maintenance free. And this is something I wish you would really, really consider for this.
Coach, could you do something for me? Could you research? I have talked to some people who have said, and I looked at one article that said AstroTurf, in some of the professional fields are thinking of taking it up because there's more injury on AstroTurf than there is on this new cross. They're doing some cross stuff now.
Hanover.
The astrograss is supposed to be better than the sheer turf.
Right. So I think we need to compare both of them.
It depends on what kind you're putting out there. Some of it has even a little bit of dust to it. So
Rubber pellet.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that.
One last thing before we adjourn, I do want to thank the school board. I saw your cell phone policy. And so thank you very much. That is a big help to any teachers in the classroom. So that was.
I went to bat of mine for that too.
What's that?
If anybody saw it.
Yeah, I mean, we really appreciate it. I saw that. I was like, that is common sense right there. Thank you for common sense. Well, your cell phone's not supposed to be up once the teacher, you can have it with you between periods and you can have it in the cafeteria, but you're not supposed to have it in the classroom unless the teacher asks. So
iPad lunches, phones must be submitted to the shoe pocket on each teacher's wall or door when they enter.
So thank you. That is, hopefully other systems adopt that policy. And thank you for a cordial meeting. All right, are we ready to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned.
All right.
I made it.
Thank you.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.